Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, April 11, 2023 regular scheduled meeting of the City Commission. If you would, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a call for attendance, please?
Commissioner Thomas?
Here.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Here.
Commissioner Witt?
Here.
Commissioner Dowles is absent. Mayor State?
Here. Before we get to the business of the day, we have, I wanted to start on a bit of more of a somber note. So you may have realized that the flags were at half-staff when you came into the building. Sure by now, many of you, if not all of you, have heard about the events that unfolded in Louisville, Kentucky yesterday. A gunman walked into a bank before it opened, and he killed 5 people and injured a number of others, some of them critically. And the reason I bring that up and the reason it's applicable to Henderson is because one of the people who died in the attack yesterday was one of our own. Her name was Juliana Farmer. Juliana Farmer had only recently taken a position at that bank, and she had only been in Louisville for, from what I understand, a few days to a few weeks. It was one of her first days on the job, and if I understand correctly, she has 3 kids, 4 grandkids, and 1 on the way, and because of what happened yesterday, she will never be able to meet her 5th grandchild. Our hearts are breaking for Juliana Farmer, for her family, and for all the victims and all the victims' families of yesterday's tragic event. I don't know what the answers are. I do know that today, in the time that we're living in, that politics are more of a team sport than they've ever been. And it's unfortunate sometimes to see that, to see all of us in this room and many of us out in the world more concerned with how many people we have on our team or how often we can win a game than to stop and realize that we're all on the same team and that sometimes our teammates are dying and that there may be some things that we can do to help that. We don't make gun laws at the city of Henderson. In fact, I don't believe that we're allowed to in the state of Kentucky. And so the only thing that I would like to ask from our federal and state legislators is that they realize that we are on the same team and that they continue to work together and to realize that the laws that we have in place, they impact real people on the other end of those laws. Our condolences, our sincerest condolences, go out to Juliana Farmer and her family. And if you would, please join me in a moment of silence to honor the life of Hendersonian Julia Farmer. Thank you. Yes, sir. Commissioner Pruitt would like to say something as well.
I won't prolong it, but in times like this, there's not many words that you can think of that can comfort. I just say pray and ask God to strengthen the family because their lives just changed forever. I watched Juliana, he calls it Juliana, Joanna.
Oh, Joanna, I'm so sorry.
I watched her grow up about half a block from my house. She is what you call the all-American girl. She could have been one of your sisters. She could have been my daughter. She was fighting to give her kids a better life. We don't have the answers. You know, how do you go from Henderson and move to Louisville and 3 weeks later you're in something like that? But all I'm saying is that we have got to do a better job with pushing our legislators to understand that gun violence is touching just about every one of us. If I ask most of y'all to stand up, there may be somebody in your family or friend that you know has been touched by gun violence. We've got to do a better job of pushing our representatives to make better gun laws so that when we go to the theater, when we go to the store, or when we go to a bank for our first meeting, that nothing like this ever happens again. So I just want to say to the family that I'm praying, and they know who I am, and they know where I'll be. If they need me for anything, just call me.
Thank you. We are going to start the meeting with a proclamation for Fair Housing Month. Oh, sure. Reverend Johnson, if you can come up to the podium, please. And Tammy.
Fair Housing Month, whereas the strength of our nation and all of its states flows from the promise of individual equality and freedom of choice, and whereas April 11th, 2023 marks the 55th anniversary of the passage of the U.S. Fair Housing Law, Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968 as amended, which enunciates a national policy of fair housing without regard to race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability, and encourages fair housing opportunities for all citizens. And whereas the Community Development Department and Human Rights Commission are committed to highlight the Fair Housing Law, Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, by continuing to address discrimination in our community, to support programs that will educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and to plan partnership efforts with other organizations to help assure every American of their right to fair housing. And whereas on February 3rd, 2012, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development issued a final rule that prohibits discrimination on the basis of actual or perceived sexual orientation, gender identity, or marital status in regards to housing programs assisted by HUD or subject to a mortgage insured by the Federal Housing Administration. And whereas fair housing is the policy of the City of Henderson, now therefore Bradley S. Staton, by virtue of the authority vested in him as mayor of the City of Henderson, does hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Fair Housing Month in Henderson, Kentucky, and urges all citizens to join in reaffirming the obligation and commitment to fair housing opportunities for all.
Is that his proclamation on behalf of the city? Would either of you all like to make a few comments? You're welcome to.
This,
Holly, will you get pictures of it?
I just want to thank all of you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for supporting us and continue fair housing, because it's important to every single person in this community and nationwide. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have a presentation from, I believe, Lindsay Lacosto and from the Chamber. If you'd like to come up and present your...
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for letting us come here this afternoon. Before we get started with our presentation, I did want to invite everybody. Whenever you talked about talking to our state legislators, we're having our legislative review next Monday at Hummingbird Hall, which is on Market Street, at noon to 1 o'clock. It would be a great opportunity for people to come and talk to State Senator Robbie Mills and State Representative Jonathan Dixon. So I just want to extend that invite to everyone here, and we'll make sure that there's room for everybody here that's in attendance if you would like to come. So on to the dog park. You might be wondering, why is the Chamber here talking about a dog park? Well, if you remember, this time last year, the Chamber merged with the Downtown Henderson Partnership. The Downtown Henderson's Partnership's mission was to create a sense of place for downtown, beautification efforts. We were a membership-based organization, and part of that was we actually created a downtown master plan with the Planning Commission in 2017. So when the merger happened last year, there were some funds that were a part of that merger that were allocated that were going to be towards a project. The Chamber of Commerce now has a downtown committee, which focuses still on the downtown events, working with the city on special projects, special events, things like that. So there were still funds allocated that were going towards either a project or some sort of grant. The committee was going to decide on how to allocate those funds towards downtown, towards bettering downtown Henderson. So if somebody's wondering, well, where are these funds coming from the chamber? That's where they're coming from. It was part of the merger from the Downtown Henderson Partnership with the Chamber of Commerce last year. When that committee met, we've been talking for about a year about what to do with these funds. And where we went to look for ideas was we went to the Downtown Master Plan. And that was why we created that. When people had ideas, we can go to what the community already had pinpointed as projects that they would like to see. And we did have, if you remember, back in 2017, we had town halls at the schools, we had them at the Gathering Place, we had them at the library, at Rookies. We invited the entire community to come to talk about things that they would like to see in downtown. One of those things that was brought up was a downtown dog park. And if you look even back to page 43 in the vision plan, which was adapted in April 14th, 2015 by the City Commission, it also mentions in the riverfront engagement that there was a need and a want for a downtown dog park. So whenever we went through these ideas, this was something we thought this is a way that not only our business community could benefit, but residents and visitors when we're looking at a broader picture of economic development and continuing to create a great sense of place for our downtown. And with the dog park, Clay did a really good job of getting some great information, and I'm going to let her talk a little bit more about the details, but I wanted to let you guys know why the chamber was coming here and where we got this idea, and a little bit of the background story of us coming forward and presenting a downtown dog park to you all. So Clay, I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, and thank you all for having us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. So you all probably had a moment to kind of look through the statistics. I won't read through them individually, but I'll say from my personal experience moving around the Midwest, throughout my life before I came back to Henderson, from places like St. Louis or Georgetown, Kentucky, a lot of times when you're new to a community, it can be difficult to kind of break in. And one of the ways that I would do that was by taking my dog to the dog park, and formed a lot of friendships and relationships. And that's anecdotal, I understand, but I do think that it speaks to some of these statistics as to what the benefit is, not only individually and not only for people with dogs, but for the community as a whole to just have a place to gather around something that's important to them. So the area that we're proposing is the Station 1 lot. We recognize that that is some kind of prime real estate, and that there may be a need in the future to reallocate that to something that is more based in economic development. I think one of the benefits of something like a dog park is ultimately structurally what you're needing is fencing. Maybe a few park benches, but outside of that, there's not a lot of permanent construction that has to happen for something like this. And so it's kind of something that could add value and purpose now to that space while not detracting from the ability to reallocate that space for other use in the future. In addition, it is quite literally connected to the entirety of the Riverwalk, and it would kind of merge that area between Sunset Park and Red Banks Park, beautify that space, make that space more usable. If you go out on any given day, especially a pretty day like today, you're going to see a lot of people walking their dogs up and down the Riverwalk. This would just give them an area to gather in that space. So looking at kind of what is there now, you have that really pretty black steel fencing. Given that this would be part of our riverfront, and given that that's a space that draws a lot of tourism and draws a lot of visitors, we would like to see, the fencing match what's already there. And so to enclose about a 2-acre space on that lot with that same black steel fencing would come in at a cost of about $90,000, just for reference. The images on the right are from the first dog park to open in Covington, Kentucky, just as a point of reference, and it has that similar black steel fencing. And as you can see, there really isn't a lot else required inside of that space. Maybe some cleanup stations and some benches like we talked about, but not much beyond that. The other diagram shows a spot in downtown Milwaukee, which obviously is quite different than Henderson, but it is along the riverfront. It shows how they've connected that space to their riverwalk. It shows kind of just a simple diagram of how you would have a one corral entrance and then a separate spot for small and large dogs, very similar to what we have out at the city park now. And then finally, just some thoughts about fundraising as we look at ways to improve this park, expand our abilities to have nicer things in it. We talked about maybe having a buy a brick program similar to what's at the beginning of the Riverwalk, where you could kind of have a memorial to your pet. We talked about a canine mayoral election, which is probably the cutest idea that we had. But we have seen other cities do this as a fundraiser. So you actually send in a picture of your dog. People pay $1 to vote for each animal. A new canine is mayor each year, and that provides some sustained funding for a project like this. And then the final one that we thought was really sweet is this community, I think in Illinois, that has an installation that was sponsored by lots of local businesses, where you could have a tag in memoriam of your pet to help remember them.
Yep. Does anybody have any questions?
Just one question, and I'm sorry if I missed it in the writing because it might have been in there. So, what is the specific ask of the city?
The ask of the city is we would like a match of $48,000. So we have, our committee has $48,000, and we would like to ask the city to match that to pay for the fencing.
Gotcha.
And again, we, like Clay mentioned, we recognize that that space could later be developed for economic development, and our organization will be in support of that. We're not planning on building any structural, shelters or anything. Everything there will be able to be moved, or if there is another place that the commission can identify downtown, we're open to that discussion as well.
Good deal. Does anybody else have any other questions?
One thing go ahead.
I was just going to ask, did you all look into the 4th Street between Elm and Main at all for location? Yeah, that's where there's not actually a street there.
That area has been discussed in the past, the more kind of a narrow shotgun.
Right.
That has been discussed. We didn't really get a quote on that pricing for that. And with the distillery there, I think there was question on how much of that, how far over they'll be going into that space, if at all, or once the pole yard is moved. But that would be, we definitely could do that.
I love the idea. The only thing that kind of gives me pause is just, I hate to spend $90,000, and then if we want to use that land for something else, 2 years from now, is it worth that investment there? So that's my only hang up on it.
I just want to say I visited a few when I go out of town, different places, and I noticed they always had like a faucet so they can have water. So I don't know how that factors in. And I guess our water department probably could help out with that. But I think if you do have a dog park, you probably need something to be able to get everybody bring their own separate bowl or whatever for the pet. So.
But it sounds like something that we will take under advisement and discuss further. The one question, though, that would be beneficial to us going forward is the 2 acres of make or break size. Because if we were to trim the size down to an acre and a half, it would cut down fencing costs significantly. So is that, what are your thoughts on that?
No, that 2 acres not necessarily a need. That was just kind of looking at the space available, and then, what would be somewhat cost effective, that was a size that made sense.
Gotcha. Well, thank you all so much for bringing it to our attention. I think it would be a good temporary use of that space. And you're right, it ties in Sunset Park to Red Banks and the Riverwalk and everything else. I think it would be a good use of that space.
another reason why we like that space is a safety aspect. It is lit there along the Riverwalk, and I think you would feel safe going there if it was maybe early in the morning. Sometimes there are people walking around, so I think as far as the safety aspect goes, that was another reason why we liked that area as well.
Well, and just thinking about a typical family of four, like us, for example, we have a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. It's not uncommon on a pretty day that we take our kids down to Sunset Park, and this would give us the chance to take our dog and take one kid and the dog to the dog park and the other kid to the park. It would give options, which is kind of nice. So thank you all so much for bringing it to our attention, and we'll certainly discuss it further.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, next up, we have a presentation from the Homeless Coalition.
Good afternoon. How are all of you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Got me. My name's Melissa Clements. I am currently the vice chair for the Homeless Coalition, but most of you know me as the executive director for United Way. So, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Brittany Smith. I'm the executive director at Habitat for Humanity, and I'm the secretary for the Homeless Coalition as well.
So we appreciate you guys letting us come today. I know that this is a subject that we started talking about this time last year, and it has taken us a little time to kind of collect some data and do some research and work with some community partners, but we have been working hard as a coalition here in Henderson for the last year, and we'd like to share a little bit of what we've been doing and some things that have been going on for us. So Brittany and I are going to tag team this, if you don't mind. But all of you received the PowerPoint. I'm sure some of you have had some time to look over it. We will have some questions. If you have questions at the end, please ask us. We don't want to walk away from here today with you all not understanding or being aware of something. So we're going to start off with our mission statement. The purpose and mission of the Henderson County Homeless Coalition is to collaborate in the advocacy and coordination of the community-based strategies to prevent and end homelessness in our community. And we do have homelessness in our community, and we're seeing a rapid increase within our community with homelessness. I'm not going to read through all of these, but we want you to understand some of the accomplishments. With us today is Dr. Pat Lake. I can't go because when I saw him when I came in, I have to recognize him. We wouldn't be here today without Dr. Lake's leadership. 5 years ago, long time ago, he took this charge on himself to help us start the coalition. And so we wouldn't have these accomplishments that you see today without Dr. Lake's leadership and many others who have contributed to this, but Dr. Lake has been the biggest one. So we are now a 501c3, so we have nonprofit status. So that opens us up to being able to write grants, to get state and federal funds if needed. It does a lot more for us than just being an actual coalition. So you can read through all of those. I won't read through those today for you.
One thing that we have taken over in Henderson County over the last at least 4 years that we know of is the homeless count, which is called the K count. It has to be done in January. That's according to the federal government, HUD, not us. So it's done on January around the 25th to the 30th. Beautiful days here in Henderson, as you guys know. So we wanted to give you guys those numbers. In 2022, the sheltered count, sheltered means they were at either at the Harbor House or they were at the Father Bradley shelter. That was 31 in 2022. In 2023, that jumped to 37. Unsheltered, there were 2 that we found in 2022. In 2023, I want to give our coalition a huge shout out. We got boots on the ground. We were out there that night. I think it was 10 degrees or less. We all were in vans. We were walking the Audubon area. We walked every part. If you want to see a map, Kenny Garrett can overlay us into the emergency management map of every area. I saw Bill's. I've never been out to Bill's. We touched every part of Henderson County. And during that, along with some very unique things, such as we had some members that went and ate lunch at Salvation Army. We do want to thank Salvation Army staff for having us as well. And we had some staff members who, I'm sorry, not staff members, we had volunteers who went out and just thought of unique places to see if they could find homeless. We found 14 unsheltered, which I think is a much better representation. I will tell you, 3 of the reports were of people sleeping in one of the cemeteries in town. So, that's not a place people normally want to sleep. So we know that the situation is continuing to get a little worse. And we're going to have the school system come up in a minute, give you their count, and explain how they do their count as well. Now, because the count for HUD has to be done in the winter, we did our own summer count. We used the same metrics that we use in the winter. We even use the same sheet. We can use an app in the winter. The app's not open in the summer, but we are thrifty and we just print it off. And then we fill them out by paper. The summer count that we did in 2022, I will tell you this was only 1.5 hours compared to the count we just told you about, was over about 2 to 3 days. This count, I'm sorry, when I say 2 to 3 days, they all were asked about the same night of homelessness, but we collected that data over 2 to 3 days. In 1.5 hours, we all met at the library. We found 8 unsheltered and 30 sheltered at the Harbor House and Father Bradley Shelter. The sites we checked were underneath the railroad bridge. Melissa may want to speak to that one a little bit more. Sunset Park. I and I'm going to call her my fearless friend. I'll call her. We went down to Hayes Boat Ramp, and my partner, she went into every tree, every bank, everywhere. We also did Axton Park. We do want to know, underneath the railroad bridge and underneath the 2nd Street overpass, no one was observed at that time, but of course that's right where Habitat store is. So I knew that a man was living there, and we just weren't able to make contact with him. So one thing I do want to say before I have Casey from the school system come up, the Kentucky Housing Corporation actually called us a couple months ago as well, and they have their Healthy at Home eviction program that they were doing. They're receiving more calls than they've ever received from Henderson County. That is coming from Kentucky Housing Corporation. That is not me saying that. They called and said, what help can we provide to you? I first told them money, of course. And they have been trying to help us advocate as well. But they're saying that what's coming to them from Henderson is far more than they have ever received in any time that they've been keeping records. So I did want to let you guys know an outside agency is also taking notice that our homeless population is continuing to rise.
Good afternoon. My name is Casey Farmer-Wolf. I'm the Director of Pupil Personnel for Henderson County Schools. I'm also the Home Program Coordinator for the district. And the definition that we use in all educational institutions in the United States is a little bit different from what these ladies use, and that is why they asked me to come today to share with you. So all public and private educational institutions from preschool through post-secondary education in the United States are guided by federal law, the McKinney-Vento Act. And so that defines for educational institutions what is considered homeless. So when I work with families, the definition that would determine if a family's homeless or not is, do they lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence? So, for example, families that are sharing a hotel room, families that have moved in with other family members and it's not voluntary, it was a necessity. Families living in campgrounds, emergency shelters, public and private areas like they were just talking about, under the railroad, things like that. Also living in cars, parks, any public space or abandoned building. And then anybody that falls under that umbrella, any child, and not just children, as long as they're enrolled in our school system. I have a 20-year-old that is finishing up and getting his diploma currently at Central Academy, and I'm working with him. So it's not just juveniles. anybody that falls within that definition is enrolled in our home program. And so what I do with them is, really whatever they need, to be honest. But whether that be trying to locate housing, food, necessities such as toiletries and things like that. But also the big part is, my goal is, no matter where that child slept last night, I'm going to make sure that they get to their school every morning and get picked up and transported every afternoon, and do not have to change schools. So say a family at one point was living in the Jefferson School District, they lost their housing or just had to, very transient, had to move into a different area, and the next 3 nights they're staying in South Heights. I arrange transportation, working with our transportation department, so that that child can always stay in their school of origin and not have to move schools every single time their family moves. Okay? So my numbers this year, I have had 134 homeless students. As of today, students that are enrolled, I have 91 homeless students. 66 of them are doubled up in trailers, homes, other motel rooms, things like that. I have 21% that aren't doubled up but are living in hotels or motels currently, 19 families. And then I have 6 students that are currently living in a shelter. Okay. The majority, 60% of the homeless students in Henderson County schools are age 12 and under. So that kind of gives you a little bit of perspective about the numbers that we have compared to the numbers that the ladies here are sharing with you. Does anybody have any questions about the school data specifically? Thank you.
Thank you for what you do.
And before we move to the next slide, the railroad bridge was one of the spots that my team did, and we identified that a family was living there and that there were children living with them. And how did we identify that? That was back in August of 2022. It was due to the materials that were left behind. At the time we did the count, we believed that the family was out getting food. There was insulin, lots of insulin, empty. Rocks that had been painted, some pictures in boxes, little trinkets that were childlike. The rocks that had been painted looked like they had been painted by a child just by the way they looked. So the railroad bridge was an eye-opening experience for me and my team. It breaks my heart a little bit to know that we have children that are living in those conditions right now. And so I wanted to elaborate a little bit on the railroad bridge and what we had actually viewed ourselves.
The next slide that you guys will see, it says HUD Fair Market Rent Henderson data. I also gave you a piece of paper as well. You guys know me, I'm a story person, I'm not a numbers person, but I do want to give a giant shout out to the person that made this entire PowerPoint for us, which was amazing. And also want to give a shout out to my operations manager, Matt Reynolds, who helped me kind of put these numbers into a story. So on that slide, according to 2022 HUD numbers, the fair market rent in Henderson, Kentucky, that should be $670. It's usually $793. So you've got a difference of $123 from what the federal government would like to see it at and what it is. Some of that's due to how low our housing stock is, our affordable housing stock, excuse me. And based on data from the same report, an average renter wage in Henderson, Kentucky, the average renter's wage is $13.07 per hour. That is based on a 40-hour work week. I can tell you many don't get a 40-hour work week. I just took 60 applications for Habitat Housing. It was very rare if anyone had a 40-hour work week. That computes out to an annual household income of $27,185.60.
So what we're looking at is based on above bullet points. That means that the average renter in the Henderson, Kentucky is spending 35% of their gross monthly household income on housing costs. And that's before your utilities are factored in. As many of you already know, the definition of affordable housing is a housing cost that is equal to or less than 30% of the gross monthly household income. In 2020, which we're very happy and pleased he could do this for us, Dr. Chad Phillips with the Henderson Community College created a strategic plan for Habitat for Humanity that utilized federal housing data with specificities to promoting favorable household outcomes. This plan strongly supported that no more than 23% of a household's gross monthly income should go towards housing cost in order for a household to be better secure reliable transportation, medication, food, and other monthly essentials.
And we know when they're going over the 23%, they're splitting insulin and multiple other things. Again, we know we only have 10 minutes, so there's far more stories that we could tell you that we have time to tell you that our coalition has gathered. One thing that we would like to do, and I'm going to let Melissa do it.
We'd like for our coalition that's here today to please stand. These are the faces and the people that have been working with us, working hard. As you can see, it's a very unique, diverse group, not in business and nonprofit, small business, community partnerships that we have. This is a very wonderful, amazing group of people, and we could absolutely do nothing that we do right now without them.
And I would like to give them a big round of applause. Everyone you see standing is a volunteer. Nobody's paid. Everybody's got their job and this task on top of that.
So for our part here to end, what we're looking at is future goals. And what we're asking of the city is just a work session. We want to sit down with you all, and we want to talk about what's going on in the community through the homelessness. We are not asking for money at this time. We are asking for a work session that we can sit down and put together an action plan. Money is something, yes, I'm not, from the United Way standpoint, I'm going to tell you, in the end, we're going to need your help financially. How much of that, I don't know yet. And I don't think it would be in the best interest of the Homeless Coalition to come to you with a figure without going through the steps of sitting down with you as commissioners and our volunteer group here to put together a plan of action to see where we stand and where we need to go. I was a teacher at one point in my life, and I always follow this even today. I need to know what I need to know. I need to learn things, and then I need to figure out at the end, what did I learn? It's a KWL chart. And that is how I follow the plans that I put together, and that's the way to go. So we'd like to have a work session here talking about the future goals. You all can read through some of the things we want to talk about, but the pictures that she had up are of actual people here in Henderson that were willing to have their picture taken and interviewed by one of the Habitat employees, which we really appreciate Crystal doing that for us. Tammy Willett, we really appreciate her helping and put together this wonderful PowerPoint. She's been a great asset. Thank you, Tammy. And now, if you have questions for Brittany and I, we'd love to take those. We have one more person that's going to come up and just share her story, and then we'll be done. But do you have questions for us?
No, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you have numbers on like our capacity at the shelters to take in homeless people? Are we at capacity normally or not?
Majority of the time. Now, I won't speak for Harbor House. Harbor House is here, but the Father Bradley Women and Children's Shelter is, in the past, probably 3 to 4 months, has been at capacity. But you also have to remember there are a few barriers that go into place still for COVID protocol that does prevent some of these individuals from entering shelters. And those are some things in the future planning and hopefully a work session that we could work out. Because even if they're not at capacity, if they're not willing to do certain things, they might not be able to be sheltered there.
And Harbor House is at
And
capacity.
Harbor House is at capacity at this time, and that is a men-only shelter, and the Father Bradley shelter is women and children.
I was going to guess that they were because the numbers were always the same of how many were sheltered.
Yeah.
And there are many studies, if you guys do give us a work session, that we'd like to bring up. One is titled Housing is not only the most humane solution, it's also the least costly option. There have been a tremendous amount of studies done around the state. We've not done our own because that's thousands and thousands of dollars that we don't have. You know, our money is fundraised by all of us, who again are all volunteers. And then you can also read that other study that no one should have to be homeless. And you can see where we got a lot of our data points from. But what we really wanted to highlight today, you know, I have never been homeless. I joined this coalition because of my work with Habitat. But I have heard so many times that we don't have homeless in Henderson, or they don't exist. And I am so tired of hearing that. I'm just going to say it that way. I'm so tired of hearing that. I'm so tired of people thinking that we don't have a problem. Like, it is very frustrating to me, and especially Melissa with the work that we do. So we have asked Chantel to come. And Chantel was raised in Henderson County. Chantel is one of our Henderson residents. And I'm going to have Chantel tell you her story.
So hi, I have no cards, and it's to keep me on track. So thank you for listening to my story. So my name is Chantel LaPlante, and obviously I am speaking because I have been homeless. Technically, I don't, unless it's not made clear in my notes, I have been homeless off and on between 2008 until 2017. I was born into poverty, and I grew up in a traumatic environment, which led to mental health issues, and basically I grew up with no support system. I became homeless as soon as I graduated from high school. Often I would couch hop between my friends, off and on. I had a job. I actually had the same job for 10 years, and in between I had seasonal jobs that I took on in addition to that. So it wasn't a question to my work ethic. I worked at the same place for over 10 years. However, because of my lack of support, I had no credit. Again, I just graduated high school. I was working minimum wage. Finding suitable and affordable housing was very difficult for me. I struggled with paying for car insurance, my phone bills. Food costs more for me because I had nowhere to store groceries. I became pregnant in 2012. I managed to get an apartment for a certain amount of time, but I wasn't even able to keep it for a full lease term because I could not afford to pay rent, daycare, my car payment, my car insurance, utilities, all of that. Basic necessities we all pay for. I had to prioritize what I would pay for, making $8.25 per hour. And it was getting harder to work for me with my kid because I worked retail, and you can't pick the shift you work. And there's no daycare for second or third shift in Henderson. I had to prioritize. I mentioned that, I'm sorry. But yeah, I had to prioritize what I would pay for, and a lot of times rent and my car insurance wouldn't be part of it, even though I still drove my car. I used my car to sleep in public places, such as parks. I used it to get back and forth to work because I had to pay for my son. I had to pay for food. And despite me trying my best for my son, our basic physiological needs were not met. In case if you're aware of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's what I'm referring to. This affected his behavior, his character development, and I never spoke out because I didn't trust anybody. I was afraid if I talked about my situation, I would lose my son. It wasn't actually until I was lucky enough to be introduced to a resource at AKZ that my situation improved. I was able to get a case manager. I got into Henderson Housing Authority. I went back to school. I found other resources, stuff that was able to support me and get me through school. So I managed to get my bachelor's degree in special education, which, by the way, is for everyone that has a degree. That's not an overnight thing. I got therapy, and all of this was because I was giving a support system. And the point that I'm making with my story is that there is a problem with homelessness in Henderson, even if it doesn't look how you think it looks. People may have not known I was homeless. I can guarantee you my coworkers did not know I was sleeping in my car before I came into my next shift. It wasn't my work ethic. I kept my job. And I was doing the best with the resources I was given, that I was aware of at that time. I had tried to contact the shelters in Henderson, but a lot of times in between those years that I mentioned before, they were full. They couldn't take me. So I had dreams and I had goals. I just did not have the opportunities or resources to reach them at that time. And I know there are people who live here in Henderson who have similar situations that may have not been as lucky as I have to eventually get that support system. And that they're going through what I went through right now, and they deserve affordable housing here in Henderson, just like I did. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor, I did want to let you know that the K-count is for the entire county,
Yeah.
not just the city. So on their request for a work session, actually, I participated in those K-counts. There is quite a bit of those numbers that were county numbers, and so it might behoove you to, have you all presented this to the county fiscal court? Because it may be a good time for a joint work session,
Yes.
not just a city work session.
Brittany and I talked about that before we came in here today, that we're a city within a county, and we truly believe that this is something that needs to be partnered with our county government. And I think that it would be a good idea to have those conversations. We have not presented yet to fiscal court, but we do plan to do that. In fact, I will try to give Kurt Wiesen a phone call today when I leave here and see if we could get on their schedule to talk. But I think that would be a really good idea. Dawn is exactly right.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you all for coming today and for all the work that you've put in and that you continue to do over the years. We really do appreciate it. I agree with our city attorney that this would probably be a good opportunity for us to do a joint city-county work session. We've got the next 2 months, we've got our budget work sessions already scheduled out. And so that gives you a little bit of time to go and present to the county. And what I would do, if it pleases the commission, is just ask our city manager and city attorney to work together to schedule a work session for an appropriate time sometime this summer, and to see about getting with Judge Schneider and the fiscal court and see if we can't do that together. Is that okay with everybody on the commission? You good with that? Good deal.
I just
Go
want to
ahead.
make a quick comment. One of the ladies, you said that we don't recognize the homeless because it doesn't look like other cities with tents and stuff and people sleeping on the sidewalk. And that's so true, because even in my neighborhood, I noticed people walking up and down the street. And then I found out, my daughter owns 2 buses. And I found out one person that kept walking up and down the street at night was sneaking into the bus and sleeping. So I wouldn't have known he was homeless. I thought he was just going and coming and had a place in the Blondale Projects. Little did I know until I went over there, a lady said she thinks she heard something, and there he was sleeping in the bus because he had nowhere to go. So it didn't look like San Francisco's homeless. He didn't have a tent. He didn't have all of that. He was just didn't have anywhere to live.
Good deal. We have a couple of service awards to present. So I'll turn it over to our city clerk while I go out onto the floor.
Troy Meadows. Troy started working for the city as a gas meter technician on March the 17th, 2003, after working 4 years with the city of Sturgis in their utilities department. He promoted to gas meter technician senior in May 2005, then to gas technician supervisor in July of 2007. In February 2012, Troy promoted to gas distribution superintendent, which is his current position, and focuses on construction, leak survey, and facility locating. Troy helped implement and maintain Henderson Municipal Gas's operator qualification and distribution integrity management programs, and boy, is that a mouthful. Troy is a great asset to the gas department, and his work is much appreciated, and we are so happy to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
Service Ben, on behalf of the city. We value all of our employees, but if they stick around with us for 20 years, we
Right.
certainly do. If you'd like to make any comments.
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
And the next one is Greg Neville. Greg has been married for 37 years and has 3 children. He was born in Evansville, Indiana, and in his spare time, he enjoys hunting. You always know when it's deer season is approaching, as Greg will have his vacation time scheduled well in advance. Greg started working for the city on November 10th, 2003 as grounds maintenance worker at the Henderson Municipal Golf Course, and then moved to the Parks Department. In November 2015, he was promoted to equipment operator, and in June 2018, his job title changed to cemeteries equipment operator, which is his current title. Greg has become a valuable member of the Parks, Recreation, and Cemeteries Department, and we are very pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you.
On behalf of the city, we certainly appreciate your years of service. Ben, sir, would you like to make any comments while you're up here?
Thank you.
All right, and I believe that brings us to a consent agenda. Before we read the consent agenda, are there any items that any commissioner would like to pull for further discussion? Hearing none, Marie, if you would read our consent agenda, please.
The consent agenda consists of the minutes of the March 21st, 2023 called joint work session with Henderson Fiscal Court and City County Cooperative Study Team, the March 21st, 2023 called meeting, and the March 21st, 2023 called work session. Resolution number 22-23, resolution approving municipal road aid cooperative program agreement with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet for construction, reconstruction, and maintenance of city streets in fiscal year 2023 through 2024, and authorizing the mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the city. Resolution 23-23, resolution authorizing a payment not to exceed $50,000 to be paid to the Kentucky League of Cities for resolution of claim against the city and giving authorization to the city manager to resolve the claim. Resolution 24-23, resolution authorizing submittal of grants for airport runway extension, construction, and reconstruction projects, and authorizing mayor to execute all necessary documents on behalf of the city of Henderson. And Municipal Order 16-23, municipal order awarding bid for the Henderson Municipal Gas Fencing Project to Burkor Fencing LLC of Walton, Kentucky, in the amount of $48,980.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Whitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Vowles?
Aye.
Mayor Staten?
Aye. Next, we have the second reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 21, Taxation of Transient Room Tax.
Ordinance number 04-23, ordinance amending Chapter 21, Taxation. An ordinance amending Chapter 21, Taxation, Article 7, Transient Room Tax, Section 21-112, Collection, Filing of Returns, Penalty of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Henderson.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any further questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas?
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Whitt?
Aye.
Commissioner Vowles?
Aye.
Mayor Staten?
Aye. Next, we have a city manager's report.
Gentlemen, we have 2 rezonings. As y'all are aware, we have a 21-day period in which it could be appealed, or the Board of Commission could hear that rezoning request. I just want to advise you of both of those rezonings. And before Dawn gets started, we will have a work session next week to discuss the sports complex organization. And Dylan, do you anticipate that to last an hour?
Yeah, I mean, it'll depend on just how many questions, but I would say my part, I can probably go through my part for probably 15, 20 minutes and discussion afterwards, so 30, 45 minutes probably.
Next Tuesday.
45 maybe to be safe.
Or 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, then I guess, yeah. Good
That's
deal.
all I have.
All right, thank you, sir.
No, you guys are in a hurry. So, fast.
Thank you, Ms. Stone.
This is a short-term rental, and so Airbnb, VRBO. The county has adopted a zoning ordinance on it, and we use the counties as a basis for ours. Just a couple of changes from theirs to ours. The first one is ours is a little more lenient. They have stronger restrictions, and they have to jump through more hoops if they're going to have short-term rentals in multifamilies. We decided that some multifamilies, they all have to come to the BOZA, and our Board of Zoning Adjustment can handle that we don't need to put those requirements on BOZA, that BOZA is capable of doing those things. The second one is the county has not allowed any signs designating any of their short-term rentals. We feel like in the city, especially for our 911 services, that it's important to allow there to be signage, but it's restricted to a 1 square foot, and it has to be on the building. So the other change from ours is actually a change in the law that the state did, and that is that now the hosting companies are required to make sure the transient room tax are paid, and that's like Airbnb. So even though the county doesn't require that, that's state law now. And the last thing that we did is we've grandfathered in our current Airbnbs. So our current Airbnbs will not have to go before BOZA to get a permit. However, they will if they change the ownership or they make any expansion that requires a building permit. So we felt like that was fair because there were some that are already operating and we don't want to force them to come back, but we do need to put in place zoning regulations just to make sure that they are following the law, as well as to protect neighbors who may have Airbnbs going next door, to make sure that they have some protection on their property as well. So this is a zoning ordinance change, which requires it to go before a planning commission. So if you all are okay with it, we need a motion to send this to planning for a full public hearing and a recommendation, and then that will come back to you with any changes that they have.
In light of the city attorney's report, I'll entertain a motion to send this to the planning commission for a public hearing.
So moved.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any questions or discussion for our city attorney or for anyone else before we take the roll? Hearing none, roll, oh, sorry.
I just
Yes,
wanted to
sir.
raise one issue. Is there, so everyone has to get a permit, a conditional use permit?
Yes, and that's what the county requires, and that's what most organizations are requiring now.
I'm just wondering if it'd make more sense if, you know, at least, you know, the highly commercial zones, you don't even have to get, you know, the permit. Like, let's say a zone where a hotel's already allowed, you know, do those
These
people
are
really
only,
need to go get a
short-term
conditional
rentals are only allowed in, if it's a hotel, it won't fall under the definition of short-term rentals, so they won't come to BOZA. So if you look at the definitions of short-term rentals, and they're in the back, if you look.
I understand that, but I guess my question, if you're already living in a zone that's zoned, you know, commercial, let's say you're downtown, the hotel's already allowed in this zone, do we really need those people to go get a permit from a special use permit.
Okay, so in CBD, so you're saying in CBD, that would be your all's call. I think one of the issues you would have is that it would allow, the other issue, well, as long as they follow the rest of the rules, I don't know that you need it. But what we're just following what the county hit on that and what other cities are, so that BOZA can make sure that all of the check marks are required. And then if they're not doing what they need to, so let's say that we have an Airbnb downtown that we have constant complaints about. Well, right now, there's very little we can do about it. We can try to do a noise complaint, but as the mayor and as Buzzy knows, that noise complaints are very difficult for the police to handle. And that becomes a criminal matter at that point, which is probably not what we want to do with Airbnb. But by allowing them to have a conditional use, that allows the neighbors to come to BOZA and ask BOZA to take a look at that permit, maybe put more requirements on that permit. And it gives us a greater ability to handle those complaints. Right now, we would have very little way to handle those complaints other than calling the police. And I don't think that you want these matters to be criminal. And what you probably have heard about is in some of these Airbnbs that people reserve them for the sole purpose of enjoying time together and maybe being rowdy or, causing a public nuisance. And that would give you an avenue, because if not, then what's going to happen is the police are going to be called every time and criminal complaints are going to have to be filed. So I think that's why you want to do it through BOZA, just for the control. So, but again, that's your all's call.
Now, on the Airbnb, say like if I wanted to use
Or,
my house as a-
and we're using Airbnb, and that's actually a company, but that's an example.
Yeah,
Yes.
but say like, I'm noticing, everybody's, hey, you rent a house in somewhere in Los Angeles, whatever. Do they have to, we have to get some kind of, pay a stipend, some money to get permit to be able to do that?
Okay, so there's two
How's that
things
work?
that will happen, is if you are running a business that owns, so let's say you have an LLC that owns your property that you're using Airbnb. That LLC will have to get a occupational license, and they'll have to pay net profits. Then you will also have to pay transient room tax. We don't, even though Robert collects that money passes straight to tourism. And then I think our fee for BOZA, I think it's $50. So you would hit a $50 conditional use fee, but that would be one time. And unless you had to go back to BOZA, you would only have to pay that one time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll just check.
Yeah,
There you go.
so those are the ways that they are. But I mean, Commissioner Valles, if you feel like that it doesn't need to go to BOZA, we can go back and pull out Ottoman, so you would say Ottoman commercial, central business. I'm trying to think, if any, we allow it in any zone which allows residential.
Once you get the special use permit, are those ever pulled? I mean,
You can,
Okay.
if you violate the conditional use.
Okay,
It's
gotcha.
very rare, but we actually have had one on Green Street that we had complaints from the neighbors on. And it was a conditional use that we actually did, and that's been in the 11 years that I've been here. So it's rare.
right.
But
Okay.
it does give us the ability to exercise some control over it.
Hey, Don, would it be a problem if we take a closer look at this and read all the way through?
Sure.
And then
Sure.
send it out? I'd like to
Sure.
delay it a little bit.
One of the things Airbnbs are, their biggest challenge here lately is a lot of people are renting these open for one night and they're having a house party. So I rent your place,
Tear it up.
then tear it up.
All right.
Invite all my friends, we'll go crazy, and then we're out the door, yeah. That's what the trend is right now, and they're trying to curtail that.
And right now, we don't have any limitations on short-term rentals in the city.
Dawn, can you help me legally? We have a motion and a second on the floor, but now it looks like we're going to table it, so what do we
Yeah.
need to do?
Motion to table?
Oh, right.
I make a motion that we table this to further time.
Do we need to vote on the one that's on the floor, is what I'm asking? No, okay, so we have a motion to table it. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, roll call, please.
I forgot your guys' initials, I'm sorry. Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt.
Aye.
Commissioner Witt.
Aye.
Commissioner Vowles.
Aye.
Mayor Staten.
Aye, and if it's a matter of needing to speed this along, then there's a possibility we could have a short, a special call around the work session, or we can put it on the next agenda, whichever one you need from us.
What it does is it just delays it to June because any public hearing that goes to planning
Gotcha.
has to be advertised, but by not passing it this time, you're not going to be able to get it back on your all's agenda until June anyway.
Gotcha. And we're not, and by tabling it, we're just tabling the look at the framework that we're setting up, but we're not preventing someone from opening or continuing to operate.
No, and
in
they'll
that
all be
capacity.
grandfathered in
Gotcha.
until the ordinance, if the ordinance passes. If you all don't want to pass an ordinance, you don't have to.
Okay. Anything else on the city attorney's report?
No, sir.
All right. Commissioners' comments. Commissioner Thomas, anything today?
Nothing.
Commissioner Pruitt? Commissioner Witt?
I mean, just to, I think, as you alluded to earlier, the deaths of the people in Louisville yesterday, I lost 5 coworkers. It's, I think, a sad situation for everybody involved. As you kind of alluded to, it just seems like it happens. We weren't that far removed from Nashville, and people tried to wrap their mind around that, and you turn around, and there's another one, and it just, I think as much as a society as we want to try to ignore it, it just continues to creep closer and closer and closer and impact us. I think the days of ignoring it, unfortunately, are gone. As you alluded to earlier, I don't really know the answer, but there's 5 people that, are now gone from a senseless tragedy that wasn't even probably predictable. I think just keep the families in your thoughts and prayers, and God gave us the heart and the ability to pray, but He also gave us the brain and the ability to use our common sense. And I think
Amen to that.
if we could get common sense to prevail, we'd be in a better position.
Absolutely. Well said, sir. Commissioner Vowles?
Nothing else to do.
I've got 2 quick things. One is there was a matter brought before the Planning Commission by the Christian Life Center. I think everyone on the commission is aware of it. They submitted a request to close an alley, and the Planning Commission voted not to close the alley for a number of reasons that were well considered. I did want to let you know that Commissioner Witt actually had what I consider to be a very good idea that I brought to the city manager, and he considered it to be a good idea. And so I think that, and I spoke with Mark Carter, who is over the Christian Life Center, about this idea, and he said that from a kids' safety standpoint, that this would take care of the issues that they're concerned about from that standpoint. And so what I think we're going to do with just maybe a general consensus from the commission is we're going to place signs at both ends of the alley that are affront the property of the churches, that close the alley effectively from 7:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday during a school session. They're in school about the same amount of time, or almost exactly the same amount of time as regular school is, so 170 some odd days a year. What that would do is protect the kids who go to that school and play on those grounds, but they would also allow the neighbors who were concerned about having that closure access to the alley on a daily basis and an all day on the weekends. And so as long as you all are okay with that, we'll move that direction. Buzzy can take care of it administratively, so there's no need for action on our part. Number 2 is I do have an appointment to the Civil Service Pension Fund Board of Trustees, and I would like to submit Linda Epley, a name for consideration for a 4-year term to the Civil Service Pension Fund Board of Trustees. Do we have a motion to approve Linda Epley to that board?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Commissioner Thomas.
Aye.
Commissioner Pruitt.
Aye.
Commissioner Witt.
Aye.
Commissioner Vowles.
Aye.
Mayor Austin.
Aye. Any other business to come before the commission that was not on the agenda today? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Pruitt and a second by Commissioner Commissioner Thomas. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.